everybody, we're at the Imp and Ogre. My name is Paul.
This is Ryan.
And today we are returning to Whiteplume Mountain.
Yeah, so the adventure is Return to Whiteplume Mountain, written by Bruce Cordell. This is a second edition D&D adventure for mid-level PCs, originally published in 1999 and currently available as a PDF on the DM's Guild.
So we did the original Whiteplume Mountain a while ago. Quick synopsis is that a homeless wizard beat up a hermit druid and took over Whiteplume Mountain, and he did a bunch of research and ended up disappearing into the ether, never to be found again. Our previous heroes, I think it was set, 20 years in the past or something?
I can't remember specifically.
So anyway, you're the next group of adventurers that are coming through Whiteplume Mountain as more rumors have started to spread again.
Yeah, and basically what we now have is pretenders to the throne, if you will. There are various factions vying for control of Whiteplume Mountain, and you can get sucked into the conflict. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a really good adventure. Sort of the gimmick, I guess, in the adventure is these K imprints, as they've called them, and it was the wizard's name was Caraptus, who did all this research, and he, I guess, made spell scrolls that had his persona in them.
Well, yeah, I think his whole shtick was a search for immortality without using lichdom, I guess.
Yeah.
So the idea was if he could imprint his personality, like he'd live forever, effectively.
Right. So there's all these scrolls you can find along the way, and are encouraged to memorize them by NPCs in the adventure.
Because they're amazing, right? The shtick with the imprints is they're not explicitly sort of presented as that. They're presented as spell scrolls. But they give you, like, spell-like abilities. So, like one of them lets you cast Fireball.
At a high level, too.
Anybody casts Fireball at a reasonably high level once per day or something like that as a spell-like ability, or maybe 3 times per day. I can't remember. It's better than a spell. Like, that's what I remember.
Yeah.
I might have written it down somewhere, but I can't remember. But associated with this ability is
the K imprint. So part of the persona, I think there's impartial K imprints in it, which where you're imparted with a part of his personality, and a certain amount of time will elapse, and then you become part of this hive mind, and you become a husk of the complete imprinted Caraptus, which is, there's 4 of them, I think, in this adventure that you run into. But each partial imprint gives power to the complete imprint. So part of the adventure and the gimmick is that it states that, X NPC has 30 partial imprints as part of his domain, and that gives him a certain amount of power. So,
well, it seems it's directly tied to intelligence level. So the more powerful, false Carapti, as they're called, the full imprints, the more of these husks that have become part of the hierarchical mind. The higher their intelligence is, and the greater their spellcasting prowess is. So I'm sure we can maybe revisit it later, but that was actually something I thought was interesting. So if the PCs are smart and they start killing all of these mindless husks, which is, maybe not morally okay, it actually weakens the power of the full imprints. I also like the players who take an imprint slowly degenerate, and they gain, like, there's a couple of random tables that give them, like, weird tics and sort of mental degeneration and whatnot. And I love some of them. Like, one of them, you sort of just be passing a note to your player, and because it should be sort of surprise to the party, but they just start whispering to themselves. It's like, I'm gonna kill you on your sleep. I'm gonna kill you on your sleep. And they don't even know they're doing it, and they keep doing it until someone's like, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? But it's all that type of stuff. I thought it was really, really interesting, and when you have sort of a madness mechanic tied into it, I thought it was kind of cool. This adventure was a listener recommendation. I think it was on Twitter or something like that. So I wasn't super keen because I really didn't like the original Whiteplume Mountain. But man, I was really impressed with the take on the dungeon that Bruce Cordell did for this one.
Yeah, it was great. I thought this adventure was really great. I like the mechanic in the imprints is that you find your first scrolls before you realize what might be going on inside of the mountain, and that kind of creates there's only one way to free yourself from the imprint, which is eliminating Caraptus. So it provides all the motivation for your characters to continue on and actually do what you're supposed to do in the adventure, so you can be free of the, becoming a husk, which is re-summoning Caraptus to the material plane and defeating him inside of, what do they call it? The Fane.
The Fane,
yeah.
Inside the volcano.
Which is like, it's got a big, like, flary ending to it, but I kind of liked it as well. Yeah. So I like that as well.
Yeah. That being said, there is another way to get rid of the false imprints or the partial imprints, is you can force it upon somebody else. So you can, I can't remember, it's like a will attack or something like that. So when you use your special ability, your fireball or what have you, you can try to force the imprint onto the person so that you can't just unmemorize them. So once they're in your brain, they're in there forever unless you force them onto somebody else. So it's not trivial. It's not an easy check, especially if you're a negative intelligence modifier barbarian or something like that. But there are other ways to do it. But the other thing I thought was cool is that killing the host of a full imprint, a false Caraptus, if you will, that imprint can try to jump to another husk. So it's not super easy to actually eliminate these threats because they can do that and keep continuing on. So I think that also provides motivation to try to return the original wizard, because due to reasons, the false imprints of him can't coexist on the same plane as the real, mind that generated them. So that's basically the only way to save the day, if you will. What else? Just from general comments, there are a lot of callbacks to the original Whiteplume Mountain throughout this, which if you've done the first adventure, your players, will be like, aha, I remember that, or, oh yeah, the giant crab again. But in no way is it required, right? I don't think if you hadn't done the first one, you'd miss out on really anything.
Yeah, and it was fun having read and reviewed, I guess, Whiteplume Mountain, reading it again and being like, oh, that's a clever take on reinventing the dungeon, right? We'll probably talk about it later, but the invisible crab later, right?
The invisible crab,
there's a lot of fun things in here that they did, and I think that they did a good job again of reintroducing the world of Whiteplume Mountain and the surrounding areas of it, which didn't exist in the first adventure. And I think that maybe, I can't remember when the first adventure was published, but could be telltale of the differences in adventure writing in the 1980s versus the adventure writing in 1999.
Well, it was wasn't this their part of the silver
anniversary?
Yeah, so it was the 20th anniversary of D&D.
So 20 years later, how D&D evolved from just being here's a dungeon, go do it, versus here's the world, you're part of it.
Yeah, there's definitely more plot in this one than in the original. And then also just from a nuts and bolts adventure layout design standpoint, I really appreciated that they put in inserts with rules that are applicable to the particular situation when you needed them. Rules for drowning and underwater fighting were just nice little box in the adventure right where it might come up, because I definitely don't appreciate when I have to dig out that information in the midst of reading it, or finding your appropriate spot in the DMG or the player's handbook. So
I think that's just good awareness by the adventure writers that we're using an obscure rule, let's provide the information to make it easy for you to run it, instead of having to stop your adventure every 15 minutes to flip to DMG page whatever and find the rule and try and decipher it.
There was tons of little great inserts for sure, right? There was little blurbs for all the NPCs, so just a little bit of information on how they behave, as well as for a lot of the monsters. So instead of having to flip to an appendices on sort of the behavior of this monster, there's a little blurb that says, oh, this is what it is, this is how it acts. So if you're sort of running it right there, it minimizes like the need to flip around if you're not, don't have the entire thing memorized, which I liked.
Yeah. So jumping to the hooks of the adventure, there's a couple. One of them is, if you're familiar with the first adventure, there's 3 artifacts that are weapons of Whiteplume Mountain of Craptus. One of them is Wave, and you hear that thieves tried to steal back Wave, and you're hired by Collector to get the item back. Another hook is that people have just been seeing a face in the smoke of the mountain, so let's go investigate. And then another one is just the reputation of the mountain precedes it, so you're drawn to go check it out.
The one actually I like the best is that you can have it so that the PCs actually have the magic item, that they have Wave, and they can get robbed. So then the adventure hook basically becomes either them investigating who was trying to rob them. So if they foiled the attempt, they can be like, who are these weird gnomes or what have you? Or if it does get stolen, suddenly they have a trail to follow to try to recover it. So I liked it just from a sort of world building standpoint, right? You can have the previous adventure involve the acquisition of this magic item, and then it gets stolen, and that kicks off the next adventure. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. It does run into some problems later on if you use this particular hook, though.
I also like that, if you're not in possession of Wave at the beginning of the adventure, the Thing Izzard is in possession of Wave in the adventure, which is a creature in the swamp that surrounds the adventure. So foreseeably, your PCs could choose to explore the areas around Whiteplume Mountain and end up with the thing that they need later on before they realize that they actually need it, which I think is kind of neat. Like, it's kind of, skipping to the end and getting the item before you start the adventure, because, one, the artifacts are powerful in themselves, but they might, find something that they didn't know that they needed for what they were going to do.
Well, yeah, you could just have them having to deal with the witch for other reasons, recover the weapon, and then the gnomes try to get it back from them, and then it sort of snowballs. Yeah, that would be a nice little hook.
So there's not much to talk about in getting to the mountain. It's there and you go.
I guess outside it's mostly just the swamp. Right?
Yeah,
because the swamp plays a big role. Either you get sent to the swamp from NPCs in the mountain, or if you were running with the hook of the item being stolen from either the players or from a collector, this is where the trail leads them, because the thieves go into the swamp and then they get ambushed by the witch's minions and what have you. So I don't know if you want to talk about the mountain first or if you want to talk about the swamp first.
I don't think I have too much on the swamp, but we can talk about the swamp first. The thing that stood out for me the most is that I guess we like the ecology and themes of stuff, but the purpose of the witch being there is actually to keep the bog a bog, and that she feeds it with her poisons and her minions and that kind of stuff, and that kind of attracted me to it, and that, like, the theme of the bog was great.
I liked the bog mummies, which were her minions, if you will, right? So they're a variant mummy, so you don't get normal mummy rot. You get bog rot disease, which it basically causes them to lose an ability point every hour and kills you after 24 hours. Also, PCs that get killed by bog mummies become petrified. And they can't, so they can't be raised normally. You have to unpetrify them before you can bring them back to life.
That'd be sort of like a good red herring in the bog, is if you had like petrified things around, and then it's automatically going to point people to be like, there's a Medusa around, probably, but it's not.
And then Thin Gizzard, which I keep reading as Thing Izzard.
Is that what I wrote? Thing Izzard as well.
So I think Thin Gizzard is supposed to be.
Thing Izzard is.
It's all smashed together.
Yeah.
It's one word name. So it's potentially a nasty fight, right? Like, she has Wave for whatever reason she gets it. There's multiple ways, and it doesn't really matter. But as the PCs will find out at some point, they need all of these items. So even if they don't deal with her initially, they'll kind of have to eventually. Though they can negotiate their way out of it, and that sort of is a running theme throughout the adventure with a lot of the potential enemies. Negotiation is possible, right? There's a lot of intelligent monsters and NPC quote unquotes in here. So in most situations, the PCs can negotiate at least partial truces with them. Though that being said, I think the trade is an equivalent magic item or something more expensive. And in my experience, players don't like giving away their toys.
No, yeah.
So it'll probably run into conflict, at which point it's going to be a really tough fight. She's a strong magic user, lots of bog mummy support, which are dangerous in of themselves, on top of the fact that it's a swamp. So you have all the environmental issues that make it difficult to move around. So,
which is fine, though. I mean, you should be going into this with probably all your toolkit. I mean, there's not too much in the way that would exhaust your players up to the point of meeting the witch. And I don't think it's difficult to find her when you're in there. So
I don't think it's supposed to be. I think it's one of those situations where
it's like, go and get it. Here it is.
If they're prepared and have a game plan, it'll be fine. But if your players are the type that are just like, let's kick down the door and smash everything, it becomes very difficult to...
Which it should be. And I think lair mechanics are great and it could be implemented here too. If you wanted to create some lair mechanics on a bog with a witch, right?
Yeah, you don't even really need to. I mean, the fact that it's difficult terrain effectively limits mobility, and she's got a lot of cool special abilities. One thing in particular, I don't really want to get into the nuts and bolts of the fight, but I liked the fact that she's got a glamour on the trident, so it looks like a little 3-pronged bone dagger. So it's not super obvious that she even has it. And if they encountered her for other reasons and just defeated her in looting things, they'd be like, oh, this is a cool dagger. And as soon as you take it off her person, it turns into the giant trident. And all the magic items are intelligent. And I guess we can talk about them all together eventually, but I don't want to jump into it right now. Because we've kind of had the intelligent item.
Well, we talked about them a lot in the previous Whiteplume Mountain, I think. So we'll mention them here.
We can, if there's time at the end, we can revisit them.
So once you deal with the bog now or later, you end up at Whiteplume Mountain, and it's simple to get there. You know where the mountain is, and that's about it. Once you get there,
the dungeon is basically 5 distinct areas, which contain the domains of 4 false Crypti. Okay, the one thing I found a bit confusing is they all have names.
2 names.
They're all Craptus. They all think they're Craptus, but then they have names that, as I guess we'll talk about the resistance movement, has given them. But I found it a bit confusing because in the adventure, they refer to them all by their nicknames. But when the PCs are dealing with them, they would just think of themselves as Craptus. So from just like a DM reading the adventure thing, it got a bit confusing.
Maybe it's supposed to be a bit confusing for the players until you figure it out. But
because their names are kind of, I don't want to say dumb, but like Nightfear, Killjoy, Moss Mutter, and Spatterdock are the nicknames, but each of them thinks of themselves as the true Craptus, and they want to eliminate the other the false Crapti, right?
But they're also who's Nyx? Which one is he? He's the Ifrit, but they all have 2 names. They have their original name,
their real name,
and then the name that they assumed when they become a Craptus, and then everyone they call themselves Craptus. So it's there's a number of names to think, but in any case, it's a bit confusing. Nightfear's domain, who is the gnome, is the first domain that you come through.
Yeah, she I don't remember, holds the upper levels.
Yeah, which is the gate. And what I appreciated was that you don't have to fight anything. You can just show up and they'd be like, are you part of the thing? And you can be like, yeah, we're guys with the thing too. And then they're like, sweet, welcome to the club. And then they give you a password of the day.
So basically, I think that I'm going to call them by their nicknames, but because otherwise it will get confusing. But Nightfear was the former owner of Wave. So all of the Craptuses crap die have one of these powerful magic items, and his was stolen, or hers was stolen, I can't remember, by the resistance movement, I think it was. And that's how it was lost. So that's sort of the angle that the players can take to get in their good graces. I did think, though, again, if the PCs don't use diplomacy, if they're like, hey, let's fight things, the creatures themselves are just gnome warriors, effectively, aren't individually that scary, but the defenses that have been set up
are nasty.
It's like a killing floor, right? Like you just like they have necklaces of fireballs and what have you.
The Hall Watch section. I called it the Hall of Infinite Fireballs. Yeah. Like it's a necklace that has 7 different fireball spells inside of it, all cast at varying levels, right? So if you were a clever DM, you'd start with the lowest level of spell casting, and hopefully you could just drain counter spells out of your group, and then you smash them with the other powerful fireballs, which is nasty in itself.
Oh, they're all behind cover and archers, and then there's all the
pitfalls are nasty. The tetanus pitfall, it's just fatal if you get hit by it.
So the whole dungeon, I didn't really go through all the different. It's a big dungeon,
it's big,
I kind of just picked out some of my favorite bits and what have you. Now, one thing I did think was a bit odd is with Night Fear, the first one, is the way you can sort of ally with them is by promising to recover Wave. What happens if you've recovered Wave by the time you first arrive there? So, like, what if you went to the swamp first? That's the sort of thing that you'd have to figure out.
Yeah.
Right? Because they'd obviously want it back immediately. Now, the PCs might be inclined to return it just because while it's a trident and a cool magic item, it's not. No, like who's going to use it? Like it's a very specialized situation, and at the also taking into account the addition, proficiencies mattered a little bit more than they do now, but that's the only sort of source of conflict I could see. If you showed up with the trident, people would they be like, would they attack you to try to get it back? Would they be like, where did you get that? Like that. The whole interaction becomes a little bit different if the PCs have the trident, and it's a large weapon. Like it's not like you can hide the trident, stuff it in your pocket or something like that.
Right.
So that was the only thing that I thought could be a little. You'd have to sort of play it by ear, be quick on your feet as the DM if that's the way it played out. Because as written, there's no information regarding that particular situation.
Yeah, I mean, don't the imprints want to bring Craptus back to the plane? Isn't that part of their motivation? No. So I was just thinking now, like
they want to eliminate all the competition. They want to get rid of the other ones because they're all false and they're the real ones.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, you do have to end up killing most of them throughout the adventure to get your hands on the weapons to even get into the end parts, really. Yeah.
Well, you sort of need to kill their main manifestation, right? Because they can jump into the husks. So that being said, for a lot of them, the actual false Craptus doesn't have the item. They're in the possession of a lot of minions. So that can make your life a little bit easier, too. Also, I think in the normal way this would play out, you'd probably do your best to negotiate with the ones that you can. There's a couple where that's not really practical.
Yeah.
Fight the ones that you can't. And you don't find out about needing the magic items until like the end, effectively. So I could see a situation where you sort of do your exploration and then the players go back to deal with what needs to be dealt with. So the smartest way to sort of see this play out is to try to be kind of double agents.
Yeah.
And like lead fights against both sides or pit them against each other, we'll help you, and then betray them and then
sleeper agents and double crosses, and
because that'll make the player's life a lot easier if they don't have to be the ones to eliminate every single enemy in the dungeon. And you don't have to. Like there's lots of ways that you can sort of avoid stuff and lie and sneak and steal and use magic spells to avoid stuff.
True.
But conflict is inevitable.
Yeah, and this is in Night Fear's domain, I think, where you find the first scroll that you can be imprinted on. I think they gift it to you.
So there's a bunch of sort of like as treasure, quote unquote, in rooms. But all of them try to get the players imprinted.
And that sort of escalates as you move on. I think one of the vows of loyalty is like everyone in the party has to memorize one later on. So Night Fear's domain, I think the things that were of note to me were the Hall of Fireballs, basically, and the pit traps. It's just a nasty place. It does revisit the induction plate hallway, which was one of the mechanics in the original one, where it's a superheated metal walls, effectively, and it just does burning damage.
It's an induction heater room, effectively. It heats all the metal as you walk through. It's the same. All the traps that exist in the first adventure still exist in this sort of revised version.
Yeah, which is fun, I think. Having made it through Night Fear's domain, however, negotiation is probably the way you're going to do it. You end up with these armbands. The next like neutral territory that you end up in is Nyx's domain, which I also didn't understand, because at the end of the original Whiteplume Mountain, you can fight the two Afrides and kill them. Yeah. So if you're playing in the same universe, I guess you either have to just have them back again or get rid of them. That'd be up to the DM, or if you're using the same party going back, that wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, it's a parallel universe.
Yeah, so Nyx is the Afridi who was a servant of the real Caraptus, and he knows about the fake Carapti and wants to get rid of them.
But he's also a fake Carapti, right?
Yeah, and he wants to he knows how to summon Caraptus back to the material.
Oh, wait, are we talking about the...
No, this is the good guy.
Okay, so this is the Resistance.
The Resistance, yeah.
Okay, sorry, I was confused, because there's the two, Nyx and Nox. Nox, I guess, is the other one?
Yeah.
All right, yeah.
So Nyx is the good one who remembers the good old days and wants to summon, I think, Caraptus back.
He wants his boss back.
Yeah, and he knows how to do it, right?
Yeah.
So he's the main motivation to getting it, and he divulges all the information pretty much willingly to you once you get there.
Yeah, you can ally with them. There's several people. He's got minions that work for him, and they're hidden. He's hidden from the other Carapti. But yeah, he wants to bring his old boss back.
And the fun part about his section that we alluded to earlier is in the original Whiteplume Mountain, there was this bestiary room, which was an upside down pyramid, I guess you'd describe it, that had terraces on it, and each level had a different type of monster on it. Those monsters no longer exist, but one of the imprints has reanimated the giant crab that was in the original adventure, made it invisible, and then embedded in a charm that it can't be turned from undead. And
he's got wearing a magic item or something, yeah.
So the Resistance doesn't know this thing exists, because anybody they send out just dies to it and never returns. So you end up having to fight this invisible crab if you decide to go through the bestiary, which I think was just like amazing flavor that they brought back the crab you killed as an undead crab to wreak havoc again once.
An invisible giant undead crab was pretty cool. Now, granted, it can easily be defeated by a second level spell, like Glitter Dust wins again. But I guess it depends on if your party's the type of people to have those types of contingencies all the way. I'm currently running a group where Glitter Dust is always memorized all the time. So invisibility doesn't work with my group. But if your party doesn't have such well-prepared people, then problems may arise.
So you do the fake crab, and you realize that there's imprints of the weapons in the Fane, and if you take all the weapons to the Fane, you can summon back Caraptus. Easy peasy.
Yeah, so that's sort of the big deal, is to get rid of the imprints, you need to bring back the original wizard. To perform the summoning ritual, you need the magic items, and the magic items are the 3 intelligent items from the first adventure, which are a bastard sword or a 2-handed sword, black razor. There's the trident wave, and then there's the
hammer,
whelm.
Yeah.
And what I just I don't want to get too into the weeds about magic items, but I do like the fact that they all have personalities. They all can talk, and if you're a mean DM, you can just have them like muck things up nonstop. Because some of them also
awesome. The hammer and the sword are awesome. The trident's
cool if you're in an aquatic environment. The fact that I will say that a fact on a natural 20, you basically kill the guy by sucking all the water out of them. That's kind of cool. But yeah, Black Razor, the fact that it steals the souls of people and gives you temporary hit points as a bonus, or temporary levels even. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head.
Yeah, it steals life force from living things but returns it to undead things.
Yeah.
So you can lose levels if you're attacking undead in the sword, which is cool. It sucks up negative energy or something.
But I'm just one thing I was curious about is as we'll see, the ritual damages the magic items. So I wonder if the items know that they could be damaged by this, and whether they would actively try to resist. Convince you or try to take over you, right? Because magic items get their ego scores and can try to control the player, or would they actively be working against you?
Interesting, yeah. That'd be fun.
To this, all right, we're going to rest. Everyone be quiet. And then suddenly the magic items start yelling. They're in here. Come and get them.
But also one of them can survive. I think you can randomly or decide as the DM. So you could have you could almost leave it up to your PCs to make a compelling argument as to why their weapon should survive. And you could just have all of a sudden the weapons as you're putting them and say, choose me. Choose me. I like the placement of the neutral territory in this because it's after you've probably imprinted yourself with scrolls, and you can find out the information about what imprinted implications have from this Afridi. So now at this point, your players might be thinking, oh crap, we've imprinted ourselves with now the persona of Craptus.
Yeah.
The only way to remove the persona really is, or the most straightforward way to do it and morally right way to do it, would be to summon Craptus back. Spatterdoc's domain, the next one. The ogre mage, Quesnev.
Yeah, so again, this would have been somebody that is a creature from the original adventure. I didn't really think I had much to say. I had much to say about most of them. Mostly, I think this is the guy who's got the vampire minion. Is it? I'm pretty sure he's the one with the vampire minion. It's either Spatterdock.
I think the next one
or Killjoy.
Killjoy has the
vampire buddy.
I think so. Yeah, because I made note of it. Spatterdock's domain was the mushroom domain. So there's fungal hulks and mushroom furniture, and the crab swarm lived here.
Okay.
And I think it's the first place where you run into husks of had the werewolf prisoner. This one, Snarla.
Oh, right, Snarla. Yeah, good old Snarla.
So ex-wife maybe, who knows. So this, I think there was nothing really.
Well, the thing is, most of the areas, there's not a lot going on. There's a bunch of gnome husks, because the idea is that gnomes were the original minions, and they've sort of survived here. So you basically just have a bunch of the same. The main interesting points is dealing with the Crapti themselves. So you're either fighting them or negotiating with them. They're all just statted wizards, right? They're all high-level wizards with spells. So from a combat standpoint, it's pretty much the same thing. You're fighting a high-level wizard. So it's I think a lot of the dungeon can be negotiated without conflict, at least initially, right? A lot of the exploration can happen with some good diplomacy rolls and negotiation. So that was sort of one of the things that I thought was interesting, is it provides a lot of freedom on how this plays out, because it's going to depend on how aggressive your players are and how they decide to negotiate with all of the, at least starting off as NPCs, right? How they negotiate with the wizards, how they negotiate with the resistance movement, and what have you. That being said, the deeper you get into it, the more aggressive the baddies become. Because is it Killjoy? Is that the one that basically...
He won't do anything. Yeah, he'll fight you, or you serve him, or you fight.
Yeah, you have to. He forces you to take the imprints.
Yeah. This, you were right. Spatterdock is the vampire battle.
Okay, he's the guy with the vampire minion who's got Black Razor.
Yeah.
So that was the thing I liked too, is with Spatterdock, if you ally with him, he gives you, quote unquote, the vampire with the sword, right? So he's going to go help you fight the other guys, which provides you the opportunity to basically get the sword. But the issue with vampires, of course, is you just dust them, and you have to find them in their coffins or whatever. So I thought it was kind of interesting that the players could devise a means of incapacitating the vampire without actually killing him, so they could steal the weapon without having to deal with basically the whole dungeon level. So there's a lot of creative ways that I think that the players can go about to really have fun in this dungeon. What else was super cool? The last. I don't know if you have anything else to say about Killjoy.
No, Killjoy was the next one. Spider-Dog, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, so the only thing with Killjoy is that he was an Ifrit, and he's the first one you encounter that you can't really negotiate with because he demands that everybody get imprints put into them, and he will try to dominate people, so he's pretty aggressive. So conflict is almost guaranteed right from the get-go. I can't remember what weapon he has.
In my notes it says he has Black Razor, so we might have messed that up, but I could be wrong as well.
I don't know. I have fairly light notes on
yeah,
this
he
one.
might. Yeah, he might have it.
Well, I know the vampire has it. So whoever has the vampire,
so he must have Whelm.
He might have Whelm, or he might have Shatterspike.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I thought Shatterspike was in the possession of the of Moss Mutter's.
Yeah, I didn't really make notes of who had
all
of the
no.
things. Yeah,
I just made a specific note that the vampire has the Black Razor.
Yeah, I think the thing with Killjoy's domain is that he, I don't know, there's fire golems there and gnomes, but he will require you to imprint to even pretty much commune with him.
Yeah.
And once he imprints you, then he takes you to the his iron chair where you're impressionable, and he'll suggest that you become part of his,
he can charm you basically.
Yeah, so you're in for mind control effectively at that point. And this is the first area that you get to where you're probably just fighting.
I just had a thought. Mm-hmm. Since the vampire has Black Razor, and a vampire is a negative energy creature, if it kills something alive, would it lose levels too? Because it's like the opposite of what would happen if you were living and killed an undead with it.
Like if it sucked the life from a living thing?
Would that harm something that's undead?
It might. Yeah. It would have to kill other undead to maintain its power. Yeah. Just like the reverse vampire.
Yeah. Right? Like,
it's friends with the living.
So it's got to absorb negative energy to gain the same benefits. I just popped in my brain while I was just reading my notes here.
I guess that would probably be a problem. Probably be bubble bubble.
Well, maybe it'd be really easy to get the sword, because all you'd really need to do is have the vampire fight something, kill it, and be like,
yeah,
I don't want this anymore. This is awful.
The other cool thing in this area was
is this where what part of the area do you remember where the myconoids are, the fungi people?
Yeah, so that was Spider-Dog.
Okay, so it's the next one. Sorry, if you want to carry on with Killjoy.
We already did Spider-Dog.
Okay. Oh, Spider-Dog had the fungi? Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, he had the fungi and the mushrooms.
Because it was a place to rest and recuperate, I remember, as you can sort of ally yourself with the myconoids that are there.
Yeah.
So there are still some benign places.
So it's like an escalating sense of danger as you go through the adventure. You could run into trouble in Spider-Dog's domain, but you probably choose to just ally. And then Killjoy is the first fight area.
He pretty heavily, pushes the players towards conflict.
Yeah, and you can find in this domain, there's the Abandoned Labs, which I think had a bunch of random loot tables, and there was the Deck of Destinies, which they put in there, which
is the knockoff
Deck of Many Things. Deck of Many Things with more random...
less campaign destroying abilities. Yeah, I remember the Deck of whatever it was called.
Destinies. And then the... unless you're talking about the Mold Worm in Moss Mutter's domain.
Well, Moss Mutter's just cool in general.
Yeah.
Because he's not even humanoid.
It's a thing.
He's a big fungal worm. I just really liked it. You're going through this giant sort of fungal foresty thing underground, and then you see this tower in the distance. So you walk towards the tower, and the tower is the worm. He's the guy.
Yeah.
It's a big sentient
mold worm
fungus.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't bother to look up to see if Moldworm was actually anything above and beyond what's in this adventure, but all the details were within there.
Kind of cool though, because it can. Moss Mutter is the Moldworm, and it can infect you. And once you're infected, you like your personality is that you want to protect the infection inside of you. So they describe it as your character having a warmth inside of them. So if another player is trying to actively cure your disease, you'll want to prevent them from doing that. And I think it's 1d6 plus 6 days of infection I've written down. Then your skin just sloughs off your body and you become another Moldworm to join in on the hive mind.
Yeah, because wasn't this one also like he could pass the imprints using his spores as well? So you didn't actually have to read it. So at this point, if the players had been super paranoid and refused to get any imprints, just getting into conflict with this creature is almost guaranteed to result in them becoming imprinted.
And Moss Mutter, the Moldworm, who's the fake Craptus, which is like so cool. His husks are the sewn together skins of the things he's infected. So you run into these skin puppets, they're called, which is just awesome. And I think if you end up fighting him, he coalesces in the form of like a big worm that you have to end up fighting. It was just like it was unexpected to see this in the adventure, and it was like a really cool take on like a hive mind kind of, something that was not sentient has become sentient because of the imprints of Craptus, which is pretty neat.
I also just like the delusion of it, that like he remembers himself being a human wizard, even though now he's a giant like worm thing. Yeah. Also, I just noticed one of my notes here. Do you remember where the blood whites were from? Which was that in? Because I know it wasn't in Moss Mutters. Cause it has to do with the well of too much life or whatever, the basin of boundless life.
Yes,
was that? I think that's Killjoy's domain.
It might have been. Yeah, I don't really remember.
So I thought it was cool because there was the artifact that was basically just full of liquid positive energy. And we've talked about the positive energy plane before, but I liked about it is if you take like a sip of it, you can recover you. But if you fall into it, you basically explode into tumors and whatnot because of too much life. And what I loved about it was that your blood animates into monsters. So basically there's these they're called blood whites, but they're basically like blood oozes that you have to fight in the area that are the remnants of people that have basically exploded due to too much positive energy.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of a really cool monster.
I think that sort of speaks to like the adventure as a whole, is that there's things that were great that we haven't written down everything, and that and we usually try and pick up the things that we think are the most awesome. And the adventure just from like top to bottom is just full of cool things.
It's one of the better ones we've done for sure. It's really fun.
So if you make it through everything and you're infected by the Moldworms, you're eventually presented with being able to go to the Fane.
So you're trying to work your way into the heart of the volcano effectively. And then again, this was where the Order of Druids kept sort of their most powerful artifacts. So it's suspended by chains over the magma pool. So getting to it can be a little tricky. But once you're there, what I thought was neat is that the spirit of the last guardian that Craptus killed is still there, and he's still pissed.
Yep.
So he wants revenge. And this is the other place in the dungeon where you can find out how to resummon Craptus. So for whatever reason you didn't interact with the resistance movement, several floors above, you make it to the very end. The ghost wants revenge, so he'll tell the players how to resummon Craptus. But he only does this if you come across as, being either wanting to do that already or being anti-Craptus. If you're just like, no, he's awesome, he's the greatest guy ever, it becomes hostile and whatnot.
Yeah, and I mean, you really don't want to get into an altercation with him. He can go into his ethereal form at will, and his attacks aid you. So
ghosts, early edition ghosts were brutal.
Yeah, like if for whatever reason you're on the side of Craptus, you're going to run into trouble here.
Now, what I think would be funny though is you make it all the way to the bottom of the dungeon, and then you find out that you need the magic items that you've left to like way at the top.
I just thought of like a way better ending to this adventure than it presents, and I'll get to it when we get to it.
Okay.
So once you're in the Fane and if you agree and you summon Craptus back, the adventure is written in M. Night Shyamalan's it. It's a twist. Craptus comes back as a baby. So as written, you have like a round or two to act before the baby's executed. But a ghost's attack age a victim. This is what I just thought of.
Yeah.
What if he aged Craptus to like get his justice on him? Like attacked him intentionally and aged the baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that would be interesting, It's like he had, he goes to do the coup de grace on the baby and everyone, gasps, but he just ages him to like a respectable age to fight him.
That being said, I think as written, the baby doesn't have the memories of the original Caraptus. So either way, it'd be kind of morally dubious. And that's sort of the great thing about the end of this is it becomes this moral quandary that like your PCs are all prepared to like deal with this evil wizard and there's a baby and you're like, huh. And then the ghost is like, I will have my revenge and tries to kill a baby. And it puts the players in the position that you can let a baby die or you fight this ghost. And it definitely presents it as if you let the ghost kill the baby, this is evil. And if you're a paladin or a cleric or something like that, your god's not going to be happy with you, and you're not going to have your powers anymore, type of thing. But it's a really neat ending. And then fighting the ghost doesn't even like fight till the end. And I thought this was a bit cheesy.
The Leviathan.
The Leviathan. So apparently there's a Leviathan that swims the magma seas of
the core of the earth.
The core of the earth, right? And for whatever reason, it's just been hanging out in this volcano for a while and has become buddies with this druid's ghost. So if you defeat the druid or make him run away, he goes and talks to his buddy the Leviathan, who then emerges to destroy the Fane. So you're basically it's sort of like the Indiana Jones finish.
You have to make a decision real quick.
You got to run.
Yeah.
And hopefully they looted the Fane first, because the Fane's got lots of cool stuff in it. Like there's all awesome like magma themed magic items. Like you could come out of there looking really
cool.
Really, really cool. But you got like a couple of rounds to get out of the Fane, and then it basically triggers a volcanic eruption. So you have to run out before the entire dungeon explodes. Now, that being said, it does indicate that there's no real timeline for this. So if you're trying to warn people and get NPC allies out of there, because there's lots of innocents and reasonably nice creatures in there that you might want to save. But it's the big finish, is you basically run out and then the whole thing explodes, and that's the end of the dungeon, which I thought was kind of cool. I also like that at the very end, you end up with a baby. You got to figure out what to do with the baby.
Yeah.
And it does present some sort of clues, hints of what you could do with it and what have you. But I also like the idea that though the baby doesn't have the memories of the original, it still has all the aptitude. So as it ages, it becomes very obvious that this baby has huge magical potential. So while he may not play a role in your current campaign, unless all of your PCs are dwarves and elves and what have you, as a future hook for the next campaign, or as the origin story of another, like your next PC or something like that.
Yeah.
I think that would be kind of a cool continuity that you can have going forward. Honestly, this adventure is just all kinds of amazing.
It was a lot of fun, and I think they really went back and did justice to one of the original adventures of D&D, and which started it off. So I think if you had run the original one back in the day and this was re-released in 1999, you would have been having a lot of fun with it.
Well, the imprint idea alone is fantastic, right? Like, even if I never ran this adventure, I think that's a cool idea to steal. And imagine a campaign where all the imprints aren't in the same dungeon, right?
And I think it uses that suggestion at some point that you have to, like, if the imprints get out, you can go and hunt them down. And, like, this could be a campaign starting adventure as well that, maybe Craptus is still out there and it wasn't completely solved, or you never summoned him back. And
but I can see a campaign where you kill the evil necromancer and you think you won, only to find out that he's reappeared somewhere else, and you go to defeat him and it's not the same guy.
Yeah.
Like suddenly it's a female gnome, and you're like, you're not so and so, but they know all the things.
I remember you.
Or something like that. Like, I think that's just a really neat idea, and the idea that you could have one of your players end up being the host. Like, we didn't really talk about it as part of this adventure, but if you kill the host of one of the false crapti, they can try to take over somebody that's been possessed with an imprint. So normally it's going to be a husk because there's no save, but they could literally try to take over any of your PCs.
Yeah.
And then at that point, you're kind of...
You're in trouble, yeah.
Well, you're dead, effectively, right?
Because, well, then you can't summon back Craptus to the plane because it'll kill the player.
It'll kill the player, right? Because that's the thing is, when the imprints are destroyed, all the false imprints, those creatures die. All the husks die. It's only the ones that have the partial imprints survive, right? That haven't been huskified effectively. So it puts you in an interesting moral quandary, but what do you do? Not much. Right. I just thought it was kind of a cool concept. So there's actually you're sort of de-incentivized to a certain extent to actually kill the false crapti, because it puts you in danger of actually basically committing suicide.
And there's a lot of, like, reasons to not summon him back too. I mean, you're in possession of all these powerful artifacts. I
will say, like, as written, you don't know that they're going to be destroyed.
Yeah.
So...
But, like, I mean, you could maybe have that conversation. Like, I think it's reasonable that, like, a bunch of people could be like, hey, what happens to these once we put them in there? Like, do we risk it?
Yeah.
We've got them all. Why not just hold on to them?
Well, you could foreshadow it too, right? You could, like, put one of the weapons in, like, the
well, that's why,
mechanism, and it can be like, ow, ow, ouch, ouch, no likey,
Well, that's why it's like, they're intelligent weapons, and you said earlier, like, do they have the knowledge that they'll be destroyed when they're put in you, and, like, how strongly will their egos try and stop you from doing this? So then you can end up in this conflict that, like, maybe you don't summon them back, maybe you end up killing the wizard or getting rid of the ghost druid, and just say, no, we've got some cool magical items and some allies in the mountain, and let it be.
You could. There's lots of ways it could run out. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, because I'd say none of the magic items, although they're artifact level power, they're not going to ruin a campaign world or anything like that.
And there could be a foreseeable future where you have 4 party members, you all become Craptuses and create a host of husks, and it just depends how your campaign twists. But I think that was what was fun about this adventure, as well as there was so many outcomes that you could potentially do, and there was no right answer on how to solve things. You could try and fight your way through everything. You can use diplomacy. You could ally with some and not others, and it was linear and not linear at the same time. Like, you had a goal, but there was no set way to finish. Which you don't find in too many adventures. There's usually you end up getting railroaded into doing things one way.
Well, yeah, there's nothing really preventing the players from just being, early on especially, just being like, really want to get involved in this.
Yeah.
We'll leave. It's only if they've become infected with an imprint where there'd be incentive to, like, get back to try to figure out how to get rid of this. Also, if you had unscrupulous PCs, they could just force the imprint onto somebody else and then go about their lives, you know what I mean? So it's I just really enjoyed it. Like, I would definitely run this. It's not what I expected whatsoever, and I was pleasantly surprised.
Me too. Anything else?
No, I think that's enough blathering.
Great. Thanks again for listening, and just want to go ahead and thank everyone that's reached out to us on YouTube and Twitter, and the support's meaningful to us, and so you can get at us at theimpanogre@gmail.com or at theimpanogre on Twitter, or just comment on YouTube videos. That's how a few people have gotten in touch with us. Next week, we're going to be jumping into a couple of shorter adventures, and they're one-shots, and I don't know, compare and contrasting, I guess, the Outlaws of the Iron Root and the Mystery of Drew as well. As always, thank you for listening.
Thanks.